Confused about how to plan for your retirement? Shawn Maloney is here to help. Shawn has created the Retire Happy framework that considers more than just how much you should save. Getting information and tools to preserve your financial future is minutes away. Welcome to the Priority of Retirement with your host, Shawn Maloney.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Priority of Retirement, where we dive into many facets of retirement planning, unpacking those strategies, ideas, insights for that thoughtful and rewarding journey into retirement. Today, we have the privilege of having Brenda Olmos on the line for us, a nurse practitioner based in Austin, Texas. She's turned her curiosity and interest in personal finance into a committed journey toward financial independence, which we absolutely love, and a desire to prepare intentionally for the future. She brings a grounded, compassionate perspective to retirement conversation, rooted in healthcare, lifelong learning, and the importance of starting where you are. So welcome to the show. Great having you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is fantastic. I love people that dive in, and it sounds like you've had a passion for the personal finance side on your own from a personal standpoint, and you've kind of dove in a little bit. But tell us, before we dive in, tell us a little bit about you and your career and kind of what got you started in this realm of pursuing, financial security or financial independence.
Yes, so I became a registered nurse at 21 years old, and I started working and realized that I was saving money. And I did something silly, like I bought a new car as soon as I got my first job, because I was 21, 20, 22, 23
Oh
when I got
yeah.
that car. So of course, that's what you're going to do. You get a paycheck. But then around 25, I realized that I was saving money, but I wasn't investing. And I came across some podcasts. This is like 2015, 2016. Stacking Benjamins was a big podcast at the time, Afford
Yeah.
Anything, Bigger Pockets. And I bought my first property just to live in when I was 27. I bought a small condo here in Austin. And then by that point, I was more into like real estate and thinking about early retirement. And about a year and a half into that journey of having my own property, I thought, well, I could buy another one. I could rent this one out and buy another one.
Right.
So I did. And this is all in the trajectory of having become a nurse practitioner as well. So I was a nurse for about 6 years. I went back to get my master's, and I've always been very strategic with my education. So my undergrad was about 75% paid through scholarships and grants, and then working a little bit as a college student. And then my master's degree to become a nurse practitioner. I had tuition assistance and reimbursement through the hospital I worked at. So I only paid about half of the $25,000 that degree cost, and I just cash flowed it as I went. And then I became a nurse practitioner in 2017. That's in 2019, I bought my second property, rented out the condo that I had bought 2 years earlier, and started house hacking that home, which was a single family home. It had a lot more space.
Sure.
So I always kept my housing costs low, and I had started investing just in index funds, stuff that I was hearing like on Stacking Benjamins and Bigger Pockets. And so since then, I'm 35 now, so it's been about a 10-year journey now, and I'm married, and my husband, thankfully, is also very interested in finances. And so we have a flat fee advisor that we use as, our guide in planning for retirement. But basically now we know that with how much we have invested already, as long as we max out our 401k and max out our Roth IRA, that we will be fine for retirement, probably around 60. And at some point in my 20s, I considered much earlier retirement, say like in my 40s or maybe
Right.
even 50. But I really enjoy my work. I went back to school in 2020 to get a PhD, and that was fully funded. So they paid my tuition and they paid me. I quit my job. I don't know if you remember, there was something big going on in 2020.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. And I had quit my full-time job as a nurse practitioner to go back to school and just kept some contract work for supplemental income on top of the PhD stipend. And I was really motivated to do it in 3 years because that's what I had funding for.
Yep.
And I did it in 3 years. And then I have a job now, which is more in administration and education for advanced practice professionals like nurse practitioners and physician assistants. So I still see patients once a week, but I mostly do administrative education work. I build projects, I manage orientation, and I really enjoy my work. So even if I didn't stay in this job per se for the next 25 years till I retire, that's okay because I do really enjoy working.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like I have a lot of flexibility in my job and now I know that I have to keep investing to retire comfortably at 60.
Sure. No, that's fantastic. We love hearing about people that take the reign early on. Oftentimes people, and it's natural, life happens, right? But a lot of people end up having that oh crud moment when they get to be in their 50s and say, oh man, I haven't done anything for retirement yet, and they're kind of in catch up mode. So it's always refreshing.
Right.
It's great. And we always a proponent of always, telling people, hey, start as early as you can and be thinking about it. It's never too young to start thinking about saving for the future, and saving for retirement. So it's great that you guys did that. It's great to hear these personal stories of people that have had success. I also like hearing, you mentioned about, being ready for retirement but you still enjoy your job. And to me, that's a big aspect of retirement as well. Just because you can retire, you have to look at what fulfills your life as well. And if you enjoy working, continue to do, or if you maybe you do something that's that not your job that you had, but something that you like doing, right? It's just because you're at that you can doesn't mean you have to stop working. Some people do it just because they like to, like you said. Um,
Yeah, and I have such a practical skill to, see patients and,
yeah,
give medical treatment and diagnosis. And so it's like I'm not going to leave the workforce when I know there's a huge need for that too. I
right.
just feel a certain obligation, not only to the profession, but to
Yeah.
society at large to exercise that skill.
Most definitely. And I love you saying that because there's, that's a phase of life when we talk about retirement, we're able to have more flexibility, whether people go part-time or they give back to their community or switch to something that you have a passion for. What a great time to have that flexibility and to give back. That's fantastic. Um,
Thanks.
but I like your perspective. So how did your background in nurse practitioner and medical field and stuff kind of really influence your planning for money and planning and all that?
Well, I worked in geriatric primary care for several years as a nurse practitioner, and I had a lot of older adult patients who were living at or below the poverty line,
Sure.
and I wasn't even 30 years old yet. And I thought, is this my future? Unfortunately, a majority of older adults do live at very low incomes because
Yeah,
they're living on Social Security alone. They never got the education, or they just simply never had the funds to contribute to a retirement account.
sure.
And so that aspect of seeing, okay, when you're older, especially if you've had a really difficult life, you have a lot of health issues, and then you can't work anymore, right? So now you're at the mercy of just Social Security, assuming you contributed to it.
Right.
And there were times where I would prescribe an antibiotic and a patient would say, I don't have $4 until next Friday, and so then I'd have to find a workaround to that. And there was a social work aspect to
Right.
my job in dealing with the psychosocial aspects of medical care, which, you think people come in sick, you do something for them, but really people come in sick with all their baggage, right?
Yeah,
Their
yeah.
emotional baggage, their financial baggage. And so that really motivated me because I thought, I don't want to end up that way.
Sure.
If my luck is such that I end up having health problems, which hopefully I don't, but if I do, I don't want to also be worrying about money.
Yeah.
So that really influenced it. And then also realizing that life is actually quite short and I'll be 60 before I know it, right? I'm only
Right.
35, but I just think about, when I told you now, like it's been 10 years since I've been on this journey. I didn't think the time would fly by so fast.
Right.
And I just see myself in another 10 years thinking, oh, it's only 15 years till I can retire. So, yeah, life is short. And
Yeah.
that's also why I want to enjoy my life as I go. Could I invest more in addition to the 401k and the Roth IRA? Probably. I could stretch my budget to invest more in a taxable brokerage account. But to what end, right? To have 7 million instead of 5 when I retire? Like, what is the difference going to be then? Like, I'd rather enjoy my life now. We spend a little money on travel. We got the
Right.
cars that we wanted because we know that we're being responsible towards our future. But you also have to live a little.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're really big about, enjoying your life while you're living it, but also preparing to enjoy your life when you're retired, right? I mean,
right.
we all work hard our whole life, so let's enjoy our time while we're doing it, but also when we get up to retirement. But you bring up a good point where you're seeing those people that, they're living on a fixed income or just living on Social Security and they don't have the funds. It's another good reason for people listening, to just encourage people to start as early as possible, right? And then we get it.
Yes.
It's hard. Not everybody can set money aside, but every little bit helps. The sooner you start, the easier it is. The other side of that, though, is also having, an actual plan, for your retirement, right? It's
Mm.
there's a there's some research out there, and the Harvard Business Review did a study, and they were talking about asking people were they ready for retirement,
Mm.
or do they have a plan? And people would say yes, but when they dug into it a little bit, really what people had was an account. They didn't really have a plan, right?
What to do?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
actually what to do with it, right? So for you, I love hearing that you've thought through it, and you've thought that out, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it alone. There's people out there that can help you out, and there's a lot of resources to make sure you have that plan in place. So that's always important to start thinking about it early.
Yeah, and one of the things I realized is I invest a lot in my life outside of work, right? Whether it's with professional organizations or community organizations or faith organizations. So my life is not centered around my work, although it does take up, 40 hours a week. I do things in the evenings. There are other things that I would be able to participate in if
Right.
my job went away, right? So I really try to make a point to be embedded in my community so that
Yeah.
when I leave my work, I'm not isolated, right? I know a lot of people, whether it's through the job or through just things I do outside of work that keep me engaged with service, with community, and meaning in life, right? Because a lot of times
Yeah.
we wrap our whole identity into the job that pays. And I just really want to be involved with other things so that when the job that pays is not necessary anymore, my life is not empty.
Right. No, I love that you say that, but I'm glad you brought that up because I think community and our involvement in community is so important, right? And it can help shape where you're going in retirement. No, but I encourage people to think about that, as you're thinking about your future of what you're going to spend your time doing. If you're not working anymore or you're working part time, what can we do to give back? What can we do to help our community? I mean, we all, Lord knows that we need to have more community involvement and compassion out there in this world right now,
Right.
and helping the people out, that need the help. So I love hearing that aspect of it. I think it's so important, so
Yeah.
important. Yeah. So what prompted you to really start thinking intentionally about retirement, right? And how has that really evolved?
Well, I have immigrant parents who never had this much education around finances. And so I grew up with a lot of financial instability, not that we were ever hungry or homeless or anything like that, but I knew that my parents' financial situation was unstable.
Mm.
Sometimes we were up high, sometimes we were down low. And I was keenly aware of that. Maybe they didn't say it overtly, but I knew just from what I heard in conversations. And so I think subconsciously, I told myself, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to make sure that I'm safe, right? It was for a sense of security. So that's where it first started. I started just, researching podcasts or blogs, and I never went too far into fire or too far into real estate. I actually just sold that single family home a couple months ago because I was like, the landlord life is just really not for me anymore.
Right.
And the housing prices in Austin appreciated a lot in the last 5, 6 years. So
Sure.
it just made sense to sell it. The tenant wanted to buy it, so I sold it to her.
Gotcha.
But I I do think that I had a subconscious sense of having to create security for myself. And so I sought out the information that I needed, and I love spending money. I'm not a frugal person. I would never tell you that, but I know that I've created at least a good foundation of safety nets and retirement planning that now I can relax a little bit. I'm 10 years into the journey. Basically, I'm coast fire, right? Which is like I can coast now. I've invested enough that I'll be okay, but I want more in retirement, so I'm going to continue to invest.
Sure.
Um, I just I think it's important, especially as a woman, a Latina woman, that I be directly involved in the finances, especially now that I'm married, because I do have many friends who'll say, like, my husband takes care of it, and I'm like,
Right.
no, like, I need you to know, like, what is your money invested in? Like, how much is it going to grow? What is your retirement number? Like,
Right.
it's not necessarily a time, it's a number. So, I think for women, we're told like, oh, it's too hard or it's too complicated or your husband can take care of it. And I just really want women to feel empowered to take
100%.
ownership of their finances and to build a life that is not dependent on anyone else.
100%. Yeah, I think everybody needs to understand, what their financial situation is, what the ins and outs are. I'm really big about making sure people are educated where they're at, where they're going, and what they're in, and what they're involved in. Right. And I think you
Yeah,
never know what life's going to bring, and
right.
that person's not going to be around anymore, or what happens in life. I think if you're married, both partners need to understand it. I'm also a big proponent on, if you're single, that you have an accountability person, right? That you can
Oh,
run
yeah.
things against. Yeah, I 100% firmly believe
Yeah,
in
I've gotten several of my friends to write a will. They're like, I'm 32, I don't need to do
that.
that. I'm like, yes, you do. You own a home,
Right?
you have some assets, like get
Yeah.
life insurance now while it's cheap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Right.
I know. I'm like, they're like, oh, I never even thought about that. I'm like, yeah, or even in healthcare where we always tell our patients to, have an advance directive, a medical power of attorney, because you don't know when you might end up in a situation you can't make your medical decisions for yourself.
Yeah.
And
100%.
nobody knows who to ask because you are single, right? And maybe you don't have next of kin nearby who can be reached. And so, advanced directives are important, medical power of attorney, having a will. I use
Yeah.
trustandwill.com, and it's really affordable and you just get it notarized and it's a legal document, So I think those things are important to take care of yourself, but also to take care of others if you're not around or you're not able to make decisions.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about retirement, I like to talk to people about everything that affects that phase of life, right? And
Hmm.
so when you're looking at your plan, it's, yes, it's financial, it's what your number is and what you need to have your nest egg generate that income, but it's also, what are you going to spend your time doing? It's the healthcare side of things, it's your estate planning, all those different things that need to be accounted for, to make sure that that phase of life is taken care of. But in mentioning healthcare, I always tell people, if you don't have healthcare accounted for, in your planning for your future and your retirement, you don't have a full plan, because
Mm,
healthcare can be a huge burden on someone's nest egg. It can really deplete someone's nest egg if you're not,
right.
prepared for it. And sure, you're going to have, Medicare, and hopefully you get supplements, and you have other types of insurance. But there's things that may not pay for, and it doesn't pay for things like long-term care and those kind of things. So you need
Right.
to account for healthcare in your overall plan. So, given your background in healthcare, I mean, what are some things you can think of that maybe people should be aware of or account for from a healthcare perspective when they're thinking about, considerations for retirement?
Yeah, I think I personally will get long-term care insurance when I'm probably around 50, just because, whether we have children or not, I don't want my children to have to worry about what will happen to me if I can't care for myself independently. So long-term care insurance is a big one, or some kind of long-term care plan, right? Like if I can no longer live independently, what will
Right,
happen to me?
right.
Um, and that's one. And then planning for chronic illness, which happens to a lot of older adults, whether that's diabetes or, heart disease. just knowing that that's going to cost a lot of not only money, but also emotional and a psychological burden, right?
Right.
It's the burden of making sure that everything's controlled. And then also that your body will simply just not be as able to do the things that it can do when you're younger.
Sure.
I know patients who they have the money to go travel Europe, they just don't have the physical stamina to do it, right? And
Right.
they're like, "Oh, I wish I had gone when I was 50
Right.
because now that I'm 70, I can't do 2 weeks, you know?"
Right.
And that's just something to consider in the big picture. My husband makes fun of me because I'm like, "What if we die tomorrow?"
Right.
And he's like, I hope we're not, but we can't just say, what if we die tomorrow to everything? And I'm like, we can't, but you don't know, right? Life is
Right.
not guaranteed. And, sometimes my parents will complain about aches and pains as they enter their 70s. And I'm like, Mom, Dad, like there are people who are much worse off than you at this age. So please just try to be grateful for what you do have.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned long-term care. I mean, long-term care, some people are going to need it, some people aren't, but it needs to be planned for. And if you don't need it, you don't need it, and that's great, but be prepared for it, right? And there's a lot of different solutions out there. Yeah, I mean, whether it's insurance, whether it's self-funded, whether it's things tagged on to whatever it is, it just needs to be accounted for. And
Right.
healthcare in general, it's important. We we talk about it, a lot of people may have heard this, out in the realm of retirement planning is we kind of break retirement into three different phases, right? There's the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years, right?
No.
Right. Those go-go years is like you just retired, you're excited, you're going to go do things, you're able to go do it, and you go do it. Slow-go
Mhm.
years is where you're slow down a little bit, your mind may be saying let's go, your body's saying maybe not. And then the no-go years is where those health things start coming in and you're not really doing much. So to your point about, yeah, no, tomorrow's not promised. But a lot of people tend to spend more money and enjoy all the things early on in retirement. And you got to account for all those different phases, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
healthcare, whether it's you're able to or not, all that really needs to be, factored in for sure.
Yeah, and like you said, managing older adult care is really difficult. I have a personal friend who has a 97-year-old mother, and she's, in a skilled nursing facility now after surgery for breaking part of her leg.
Right.
And she's like, we can either pay 280 something dollars a day for her to stay there because she's exceeded her Medicare benefits, or I can bring her home, or I can try to find, private care, which is also very expensive. And
Yeah.
so it's just, people are put in these really tight corners, especially if, nobody plans to live till
Right.
97, but you may,
You may, yeah.
right? And
We're all living
so,
longer. For a lot of people
right, we're
living
all
longer.
living longer. Right,
Well,
right.
from your personal experiences, what would you say to someone that just, is thinks it's too late to save or too late to start planning, or just the idea of planning a retirement kind of overwhelms them? From your personal experience, what would you say to somebody like that?
Yeah, it takes time and that's okay. And it's never too late, right? I mean, you still have time to invest for that money to grow. And if you have to keep working a little while longer, that's okay too. The important thing is waking up to the need, right?
Yeah.
And doing something about it, whether that's just baby steps, like maybe contacting someone like you, contacting an advisor and just saying, like, here's my situation. I mean, I have a friend of a friend who's a physician
Mhm.
and she didn't have anything planned, just
Right.
not sure what she's doing, trying to pay off student loans, just making a ton of money, but not necessarily doing anything proactive with it. And
Right.
she met with an advisor and it now is getting all the ducks in a row. So
Yeah.
really, it's important to have guidance. There's a ton of information on the internet. So if you want
Right.
to DIY it, that's possible. But I think especially like a fee-only advisor is totally worth the money and can really put you on the right track. And, if it's just one meeting a year, that's fine, as long as you've got another set of eyes on it. And even just to serve as a cheerleader as well, right? To
Right.
say,
Right.
it's got, I mean, we don't believe it sometimes when he tells us like, you're going to have $3 million at this time or whatever. We're like,
Right.
I don't know. But, he's like, no, like that's what the math says, so
Well,
that's
to
helpful.
that point, the cheerleader part of it, some of it is really the emotional side of it, right? Because when you do with the DIY aspect of it, people panic when things happen in the markets or things happen, and they make emotional
Mhm.
decisions. Just like there's emotional buying when you go to the store, it's the same kind of where human nature is, we're emotional beings, and
Right.
sometimes just having that other person there to help give advice or guide you is super important just from an emotional standpoint.
For
Um,
sure.
Emotions can run wild, and it really doesn't matter how much you have or don't have. You should start planning and have an idea of what you have. What I think is kind of interesting is you mentioned like a physician not being ready. I see that more often than most people would think, is that sometimes that people that make a decent wage, or living, think that, okay, I'm okay, but they're not the best at saving for the future, or
Correct.
what happens when you stop working, right? And don't
Right.
have that paycheck anymore. So it's interesting to kind of see the dynamics there, but it's kind of a unique circumstance.
Yeah, it's great to make a lot of money, but if you're not putting it to work
Right.
or just spending it all, you're going to have to keep working forever.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, man, it's been a pleasure having you on. I appreciate your insights and your comments. We love having different insights from different people. Love that you're in the medical field doing what you're doing and giving back to your community. So again, thank you for coming on. And to everybody that's listening, here's to aligning your future. And until the next episode, y'all have a blessed day.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to The Priority of Retirement with Shawn Maloney. If you enjoyed the show, check out our reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more free resources to help with your retirement journey, go to retirewisepro.com or check the link in the show notes. You can also download a free copy of Shawn's book, The Priority of Retirement, or reach out to discuss working with him directly at retirewisepro.com. Thanks for listening.
Insurance products offered through the insurance business RetireWise LLC. RetireWise LLC is also an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM, a registered investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by RetireWise LLC are not subject to investment advisor requirements. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the insuring carrier. This podcast intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. RetireWise LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during the show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by RetireWise LLC. Guests of the Priority of Retirement are not affiliated with, nor do they endorse Shawn Maloney or RetireWise LLC.